Well, it's about time we talk to Jim Gaffigan about his acting career in Most Wanted. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I am pleased to have on a comedian who I have followed for years. I've actually seen him live at LA Live. Jim Gaffigan is joining us here on the Film Threat Podcast, something I thought I would never say. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I have watched your comedy for years. I've seen your comedy specials. You have a new one coming out, from my understanding.
I do. It's coming to Amazon Prime on the 24th, the same day that this movie comes out. So people could binge all Jim Gaffigan if they wanted.
Let's do a Jim Gaffigan day on the 24th. But I've noticed recently you've started appearing in movies in rather serious roles. I mean, it's certainly a far cry from, your stand-up work. And in Most Wanted, I think there's a scene that involves you and a gun. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that if you showed that to your kids, you would make them cry.
Well, hopefully. It's weird because I feel as though I have this conversation with a lot of the movies I do. And some of it is, look, we work in the perception industry. Mm-hmm. And I am grateful for the career I have. I do love acting. I feel as though, I've been doing it for 30 years, but I'm just now getting some of the opportunities that I wanted. And, but yeah, it is. And, being known for something else is something that, I think as an actor, you use as an advantage in a scene, particularly, my character of Picker, who's attempting to gain the trust of, Antoine Pion's, character. It's pretty important for, this guy who, it's not a great guy to be able to con people, because he's conning the cops, he's conning everyone.
Well, this came from a true story. The story in Most Wanted. Were you aware of the story at all before you were offered the part?
I didn't know about the story. I didn't know. I didn't know it was based on a true story when I read the script. I was offered the role. I loved the fact that, I'm a two-timing drug dealer. How often am I going to get offered that?
Right.
And so, granted, I'm also a guy who is a commercial fisherman, but I just responded to the story. And then when I found out it was based on true events, it made it more interesting. And then when I found out that my character just kind of skirted away, it really made me, it's so fun to obsess on building a character because, obviously this guy's based on, but I couldn't talk to him or anything. But it was also, working with the director. In the end, I want to be a good soldier for this director's vision, who's, he lived and worked on this script for 12 years. So I wanted to help him communicate that vision. But it's also one of those things where I just love the mathematics of building a character. And, some of it is adjusting. You get into a scene, like when I met Antoine, I didn't know what it was going to be like, but I met him the first day we started shooting. And so it was pretty intense.
Did you do any research based on the character that you played, the Picker role?
It's weird because he is a guy who he takes people fishing. He has an arrangement with the police. He deals some drugs. He's a little bit of everything. My big takeaway was that he was probably intelligent enough, and this is not that rare for really successful criminals. It's like if you had just done that in the stock market, or if you had done that with a retail business that was legitimate, you'd be fine. But this guy was all about the quick fix. He was all about the next $10,000 he could get. And I just, portraying a guy who's essentially lying to the cops is just insane, right?
Well, it's I don't want to give away too much, but there's a great scene, one of my favorite scenes, that shows you trying to stage the fact that you're with this drug lord, and you kind of see this sort of that scene play out along with the telling of the bullshit story that accompanies the picture. How much fun was that? And when you read that in the script, I thought that that was just a really telling moment that said so much about that character.
Yeah, no, it was, it's interesting because I also described this guy. It was so fun because it's in the script too, but you can tell that this guy is really the only bad guy in the movie. I mean, there's police corruption, obviously, but the motivation behind that police corruption, in my opinion, was just stupidity, or cover up. Mm-hmm. But the motivation of my character was purely self-serving, absent of empathy. He didn't care if the consequences led to people's deaths or to someone going to jail for a lifetime. It just was completely self-serving. And I don't know, maybe, working in comedy and dealing with comedy club owners, I've met people like this. You know what I mean? It's, the entertainment industry is pretty icky. You know what I mean? It's like, half the acting classes are cons. You know what I mean? And a lot of actors and performers and comedians are very impressionable. I was probably the victim of a bunch of cons myself.
Yeah, well, it's just surprising to me how many comedians like yourself succeed so well in acting. And do you have an observation about why that is? Why is it so many? I mean, look, one of the greatest actors of our time, Tom Hanks, began in comedy.
Yeah.
Right. So why is that become such a thing? Why is it that comedians make that shift so easily?
Well, here's what I would say. What I would say is that there are comedians that love acting, and then there are the comedians that don't care about acting. So in talking about the comedians that do love acting, I think that people underestimate how serious comedians are and how observant they are on human behavior. I mean, I know this sounds like I'm talking out my ass and all this, but you have to go into a room and read it when you're a comedian. And sometimes you're wrong, but often that's kind of a sense that you kind of develop. And so stealing from that, you can use that in comedy. You can use that in a lot of situations. But I think that comedians are also acting throughout their performance. I know that there's this kind of cliche that people think that comedians are making things up, but there is a performance, and we have to be in touch with maybe the anger or the confusion surrounding a topic. But I think that also, hopefully, comedians have a self-awareness, and that self-awareness allows them to find different aspects of them in other characters. Like, I'm not like this guy Picker, but who knows? You know what I mean? It's like, all through our lives, we're all making decisions, and sometimes, the lead character in this movie was really the victim of some bad luck and bad decisions. And I was lucky. You know what I mean? I worked hard, but I was definitely lucky that I never, I've got a very addictive personality, but I never did heroin. I did cheeseburgers. Yeah.
Yes. I love when you talk about food in your stand-up. It's always very relatable. But in the last couple of years, you really shifted to, I mean, obviously you're still doing comedy, but you're able to balance more serious roles in more and more, especially independent films. Is this where you see your career more going? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've always wanted to do these types of roles. I just was never offered them. And I think, it really comes down to, I think that the success I had in stand-up can probably help get a film made, or can help, producers think that I can draw people to see it. So that opened up opportunities. But here's what I would say is, like, I love comedies. I love acting in comedic roles, but dramatic roles are typically more complex. They're well thought out. There's typically more nuance. Obviously, there's exceptions, and the thing about indie films that I love is that everyone's there for the right reason. It's like nobody's seeking some fame. You know what I mean? They're not doing it for a paycheck. Everyone's there because we get a strange buzz from creating these small projects that might not be seen by many people, but are very rewarding in themselves. So I love doing indie films. I love, I love kind of bringing ideas, but also being deferential to a director or a writer, because I've been on the other side. I was the executive producer of a TV show, and I know that you want someone who's going to be a good soldier. You want someone who's going to bring ideas, but also not be like, I don't like my breakfast. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that, but I think some of it is maybe doors are starting to open, and I'm grateful for it, because like this movie, I did this movie 2 years ago, and I'm so excited for people to see it, because it's an interesting story. It's also dealing with the importance of investigative journalism, which is really kind of under attack today.
True.
And so, but it's great storytelling. And I'm also excited because I think this director, Daniel Roby, is part of, there's these great directors that come out of certain places. Like there's a lot that came from Mexico. Now there's a lot that came from Quebec. And so he's part of this long list of Quebecers that are amazing.
Can you see yourself getting involved in the behind the scenes as well? I mean, you've produced shows. What about
the thing? I think because I was, with the Jim Gaffigan show, my wife and I, we wrote all the episodes and we executive produced. And obviously there was a lot of help from other people. But, I think I learned that, to be a director or even a producer, I don't know if I want to make 100 decisions in an hour. Do you know what I mean? And I like obsessing on things. That's where it's very similar to stand-up, is that I can sit there and obsess on an avocado or bull riding. And that's similar to individual moments in an acting scene. I love that obsession of how, obviously you have to listen and react, but of what the psychology a character is dealing with in a moment. Whereas like being in charge of everything, I don't know. Look, I would direct and produce if it presented more or better opportunities, but I'm seeking creative fulfillment. I'm not, nothing against Infinity War, but I'm not dying to get in there, and I've got kids, but I know they'd be impressed for a day.
Well, it's like, Danny Trejo did Spy Kids. He wanted, his kids to be able to see him in a movie. Could you see yourself? But you've done some kid films, or whatnot. But you can't see yourself being in a Marvel or a Star Wars movie.
Look, I would love it, but I also know that I was in Hotel Transylvania 4, where I had a pretty significant role, and I brought my kids. And the youngest one was impressed for a day. And then he was like, anyway, can you get me, can I have my laptop? You know what I mean? Like, it's, for me, it's really the reward of the character. And I know that sounds kind of corny, but look, obviously Infinity War, there was, you know, amazing story, and Star Wars is a bunch of interesting story points, but you know, I want to play an interesting person. I don't, you know, like I always kind of read a script and I'm like, how can I make this a little bit more complex than it is?
Well, I appreciate that. And I can't wait to see you. And you've got other ones coming up. Tesla's coming up, right? Aren't you? Yeah, like some amazing stuff. And Jim, I've just been a fan of you and your comedy, and I'm so ecstatic that you're breaking out as an actor in really some amazing films. So thank you for talking to us on the Film Threat podcast. And I have to thank our sponsor. It's like, you know, when you go on a podcast, you got to thank a sponsor.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Storyblocks.com. If you go to storyblocks.com/film threat,
they
are the best. I love them. And I can't wait for your new comedy special, July 24th. Jim, thank you again. Congrats on the movie Most Wanted, July 24th. Thanks for spending time with us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.